I really felt like last year was like I started to see my growth and like the seeds I had been planting the years prior within like my personal life, my career, all of that stuff. I started coaching more. We launched this podcast together. I became a published author.
Woohoo.
Thank you. I married the love of my life. We were in the process of buying a house and starting our family. Like, I really felt fulfilled in all of these areas. And then, bam, like out of nowhere, my sister unexpectedly died. And that was like my person. Love my husband to death, but that was my sister and my best friend. That was my person. And it turned my world inside out. And then shortly after that, I found out I was pregnant, which is a great thing, but in the middle of grief, it's a really hard thing. And now we are dealing with more shit hitting the fan in our family. And it's really hard to stay positive and think of the future when you're in the midst of so much uncontrollable change in your life. So, how do we become who we know we can be and ultimately who we desire to be, even though we can't clearly identify who we are now or really identify what the future may look like because it's so hard to even picture?
The other stuff that you said is hitting the fan, is that also grief or that's just other stuff?
Other stuff that has to do with that grief and just her death in general. Now just dealing with family things.
So, grief is a special word. For any negative emotion, I try to move through it as quickly as possible, except grief. Because grief, for me, at least personally, I'm not trying to be prescriptive in advice, but I think for me personally, grief is just something that you have to deal with and you will ultimately get through it. And to not place the extra burden of having to be your best self when you're dealing with insane grief. If it was something else, if you are, jealous or angry or frustrated or something else, so you're like, Mika's got her caffeine, I don't have one, and you're jealous, like moving through those emotions quickly, I think it's helpful. And there's strategies to do it. But grief, I think just has to be processed and there's no timeline. Like, don't judge yourself for not being through it in a week. I mean, I don't know how long it's been, a year, a month. Like if you're like 15 years later and you're still dealing, okay, then there's something that we haven't processed properly. Maybe it's time to probably earlier than that, get some professional help on that. But it's totally normal. And you don't need the extra burden. If it means you don't show up for a couple of these podcasts, cool. Jules and Mika got it. And if you have to let people around you know that you're dealing with this, and it means that your book tour doesn't come out or your next book doesn't launch, like that's okay. Don't feel bad. You're processing. Like grief just has to be handled. And I mean, I'd say don't grieve alone. If you have amazing friends like Mika and Jules and others that you can call up and hang out with, that helps. But don't worry about being your best self when you're in the middle of grief.